My name is Christine Andler, and I'm 34 years old. Last Christmas Eve, I arrived late to my family's holiday party, and the first thing I heard through the front door was my parents raising their glasses. My father's voice carried clear through the wood. "Thank God Christine didn't show up." My sister laughed. "Nobody wants her here anyway." The whole room clinked glasses. I stood on the porch with snow catching in my hair, hearing every word. But that toast wasn't why I called my lawyer. That happened 3 weeks earlier, when I discovered someone had taken out a $285,000 mortgage on the house I own, with my forged signature. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button, and drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to August, the night I first noticed something was wrong with my mail. I grew up in Ridgemont, Pennsylvania, one of those towns where everyone knows your car and your credit score follows you into Sunday service. My parents' house sits on Oak Lane, a white colonial with black shutters and a flagpole my father installed the year he lost his contractor's license. He still flies the flag every morning. I'm the younger daughter, the reliable one, the one who answers the phone at midnight when the furnace dies, or the insurance lapses, or the restaurant needs a cash injection to survive another quarter. My sister Diane is 5 years older, louder, prettier according to our mother, and the undisputed center of every family gathering. She opened a place called Reeves' Table 4 years ago with her husband Greg, farm to table, exposed brick, the whole aspirational package. I lent her $50,000 to get it off the ground. She never signed a promissory note. She never mentioned paying it back. Over the past 8 years, I've written checks totaling more than $100,000 for this family. $15,000 for my father's knee surgery when his insurance lapsed. $20,000 for a new roof on my mother's house after a storm she could have filed a claim for, but didn't. Another $12,000 when my father owed back taxes and the IRS started sending certified letters. Every single time I brought up repayment, the response was the same. My mother would tear up and whisper, "We're family, Christine, not a bank." My father would square his shoulders and say something about loyalty. Diane would roll her eyes and call me the accountant, not as a job title, but as an insult. Here's the part that matters. I own 2 properties. My house, which I bought at 28 with money I saved working 60-hour weeks, and a rental property I bought at 31, the same house my parents and Diane's family have been living in rent-free for 2 years. I never asked for gratitude. I just expected them to not steal from me. It started with a missing envelope. August 14th, a Wednesday. I checked my mailbox after work the way I always do, keys in one hand, bag in the other. But there was nothing from my mortgage servicer. No statement, no annual escrow analysis, nothing from the county assessor either. I let it go for a week. Mail gets lost. Then 2 weeks passed with nothing but flyers and credit card offers. No bank correspondence at all. I called the post office on a Friday morning. The woman on the line pulled up my address and went quiet for a moment. "Ma'am, there's a forwarding order on your mail. Everything's being rerouted." "To where?" She read me the address. 614 Oak Lane, Ridgemont, my mother's house. I sat in my car outside the post office for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the dashboard clock while my hands went cold on the steering wheel. Then I opened my laptop, logged into the credit monitoring app I've used since I was 26, and pulled my report. There it was. A new mortgage. $285,000. Opened July 9th. Listed against my primary residence. The house I owned free and clear with no existing liens. The lender was a regional bank I'd never contacted. The loan type was a cash-out refinance. And the application showed my name, my social security number, and my signature on every page. I zoomed in on the signature. I've signed my name tens of thousands of times, on tax returns, audit reports, closing documents. I know every loop and slant of my own handwriting the way a musician knows their own chord voicing. That signature was close, but the downstroke on the A in Andler was wrong. Whoever signed it pressed too hard at the top and faded at the bottom. I do it the other way around. The signature on the mortgage application was mine. Except I never signed it. I called Nathan Ferris the next morning. He's a real estate attorney 2 towns over, not a friend, not a favor. I found him through the state bar directory and paid his retainer with a cashier's check. Nathan doesn't small talk. He asked me 3 questions. Did I authorize anyone to act on my behalf? No. Did I sign a power of attorney at any point? No. Did I know the notary listed on the documents? I looked at the name. Linda Pruitt. That's my mother's friend, I said. They play bridge on Thursdays. Nathan exhaled through his nose, the kind of breath that says more than a paragraph. I'm going to need the original mortgage documents from the lender. I'll request them under the fraud investigation provision. In the meantime, don't contact the notary. Don't contact anyone connected to this. Within 10 days, he had the paperwork, the original application, the closing disclosure, the notarized signature page. He laid them across his conference table and set my actual signature, pulled from my most recent tax filing, beside them. The stroke pattern is inconsistent, he said, pointing with a pen cap. Pressure distribution, letter spacing, the way the capital C connects to the lowercase h. A handwriting analyst would confirm it in a day, but I can already tell you, this isn't your hand. He leaned back. The notary, Linda Pruitt, certified that she witnessed you sign in person on July 9th. Were you in Ridgemont on July 9th? I pulled up my calendar. July 9th I was in Philadelphia at a continuing education seminar. 47 other accountants saw me there. I had the registration receipt and a parking garage timestamp. Nathan closed the folder. This isn't just fraud, Christine. This is a felony. I still didn't know who was behind it. Part of me, the part that still believed in the family on Oak Lane, hoped it was someone outside. Nathan traced the money in 4 days. The $285,000 was dispersed by the lender into an account titled Andler Family Trust. I'd never created a trust. I'd never authorized one. The account was opened 2 weeks before the mortgage closed, using my social security number and a post office box registered to my mother's address. From there, the money split into 3 clean wires. $180,000 went to a business account for Reeves Table LLC, Diane's restaurant. The same restaurant she told the family was thriving. The same restaurant I'd already lent $50,000 to start. $65,000 went to a personal checking account in my father's name, Richard Andler, the man who told me loyalty mattered more than receipts. $40,000 went to my mother, Patricia Andler, the woman who cried every time I asked to be repaid. I sat in Nathan's office and read the wire transfer confirmations one by one. Each line was a name I'd known my entire life. Each dollar was a decision someone in my family made while I was 40 miles away, earning the money they were spending. Nathan waited until I looked up. The trust formation documents list your sister as the organizer, he said. She filed the paperwork with the state. She arranged the notary. She submitted the mail forwarding request to reroute your bank statements. Diane, the golden child. The one who called me the accountant like it was a slur. She hadn't just borrowed against my house. She'd built the entire operation, recruited our parents, hired their friend to notarize a forgery, redirected my mail so I wouldn't catch it, all to save a restaurant that was already drowning and fund lifestyles none of them could afford. I kept reading the numbers. Every line was a family member. Every dollar was a lie. Nathan laid it out for me the way you'd read a patient their lab results. Steady, specific, no cushioning. If this loan goes into default, and it will, because nobody's making payments, the lender will foreclose on your primary residence, your house, the one you actually live in. I nodded. I already knew that part. But here's what you might not have considered. You hold a CPA license. Your firm runs background and credit checks annually. A foreclosure on your record doesn't just cost you the house. It puts your license renewal at risk. It flags every professional audit you've ever touched. I felt it then, the weight of what they'd done settling into a shape I could measure. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd put a countdown clock on everything I'd built since I was 22 years old. So what are my options? I asked. Nathan ticked them off. File a fraud report with the county district attorney. File a civil suit to recover the $285,000 plus damages. Request an emergency injunction to freeze the mortgage so the lender can't begin foreclosure proceedings while the fraud investigation is active. And the rental property, I said. He looked at me. They're living there rent-free. No lease, no agreement. They've been there 2 years and now they're spending my money on restaurant renovations while they sleep under my roof. Then we prepare an eviction notice, proper channels, 30-day written notice. If they don't vacate, we seek a court order. I authorized everything, every filing, every motion, every letter. But I told Nathan one thing. I didn't want to confront them yet. I wanted every document signed, sealed, and enforceable before anyone in my family heard a word from me. He agreed. Preparation isn't revenge, he said. It's due diligence. While I sat in a lawyer's office reading wire transfer receipts, my family carried on like nothing had changed. Diane posted on Instagram 3 times that week. The first was a photo of Reeves Table's new VIP lounge, exposed beams, pendant lighting, leather banquettes. Expanding into the next chapter, the caption read, with a champagne emoji, $180,000 of my stolen equity turned into Instagram content. The second post was her and Greg at a wine bar in the city, matching scarves. Date night with my best friend. I calculated the drive time, 2 hours from Ridgemont. They used my rental property as a free home base and my forged mortgage as a credit line, and they were drinking Pinot in Philadelphia. My mother called on a Tuesday evening. Her voice had that particular sweetness she uses when she wants something to feel normal. We're doing Christmas Eve at the house this year, the whole family. I'm making the ham. Your Aunt Susan is bringing her pie. You should come, honey. We miss you. The house. My house. The rental property I owned and they occupied without paying a cent. She was inviting me to my own property like it was a favor. I said I'd think about it. My father texted the next day. Your sister's restaurant is doing great. You should be proud. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Proud. Of a business funded by forging my name on a $250,000 loan. I saved the text. Screenshot. Time-stamped. Then the formal invitation arrived in my actual mailbox. A printed card with holly borders. Christmas Eve, 6 p.m., 614 Oak Lane. They were throwing a party at my rental property for my extended family without asking me if they could use the house. I set the card on my kitchen counter and let it sit there for 3 days. I told myself I'd give them one chance, not because they deserved it, because I needed to know, before I signed the final paperwork, whether there was any version of this where they'd own what they did. I called my father on a Saturday morning. He picked up on the second ring, already mid-sentence about a football game. Dad, I said, I need to ask you something. Sure, sweetheart. Do you know anything about a mortgage on my house? 3 seconds of silence. I counted them against the clock on my microwave. What are you talking about? There's a $285,000 loan taken out in my name, against my primary residence, with a forged signature. I heard my mother's voice in the background, muffled, urgent, the pitch rising like she was coaching him from across the room. My father cleared his throat. That's ridiculous. You probably forgot you signed something. He didn't say which something. He didn't ask what lender. He didn't react the way a person reacts when they hear their daughter's been the victim of identity theft. He reacted the way a person reacts when they've been caught. I didn't forget, Dad. Christine, you always do this. You always make everything about money. That's why nobody wants you around. There it was, the same sentence I'd hear again 3 weeks later, through a closed front door on Christmas Eve. He was already rehearsing it. I heard my mother whispering again. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the rhythm, short, sharp, instructional. She was telling him what to say. I have documentation, I said. The notary was Linda Pruitt. The line went dead. He didn't hang up gently. He didn't say goodbye. The call just cut. The way people end conversations when the next word out of their mouth would be an admission. 22 minutes later, my phone rang again. Diane. Her voice had that practiced calm. The one she uses at the restaurant when a customer complains about the wait and she needs them to feel stupid for asking. Christine, Mom is crying. What did you say to Dad? I asked about the forged mortgage. Pause. I could hear her breathing change, shorter, shallower, the sound of someone recalculating. God, here we go. You've always been paranoid. The notary was Linda Pruitt, Mom's bridge partner. 5 seconds. Nothing. I let the silence sit. Look, Diane said, and her voice shifted, harder now, the hostess mask slipping. Even if someone borrowed against your house, you owe this family. You owe us. I owe this family $285,000 in fraud. You have two houses, Christine. Two. We have nothing. Dad lost his business. My restaurant is underwater. Mom hasn't had a new coat in 3 years. And you sit up there in your neat little life counting your money and judging us. Diane, the wire transfer to Reeves' table was $180,000. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning. The moment she realized I didn't just know about the loan, I knew where the money went. Who told you that? It's in the bank records. She recovered fast. Diane always does. Fine, fine. So we used the money. So what? You would have said no if we asked. So you forged my signature instead. I did what I had to do for this family, something you've never understood. I've given this family over $100,000, Diane. And you've reminded us every single time. She hung up. But she'd already confirmed what I needed. She knew about the loan. She knew because she built it. The next morning, I sent the email. It went to all three of them, my father, my mother, my sister, with Nathan copied on the CC line. Professional letterhead, numbered paragraphs, no emotion. The terms were simple. Repay the $285,000 within 30 days. Vacate the rental property at 614 Oak Lane within 30 days. Cooperate with an independent forensic audit of all accounts connected to the Andler Family Trust. Failure to comply would result in a civil lawsuit, a criminal fraud referral to the county district attorney, and an emergency petition for eviction. I signed it with my full legal name, Christine M. Andler. 3 days passed. No response. Not a call, not a text, not even a read receipt from the email. On the 4th day, my mother texted, "If you do this, you'll have no family left. Is that what you want?" I read it sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in my hand. Outside, the first frost of December had turned the yard silver. I could see my breath against the window. She didn't deny the fraud. She didn't promise to repay the money. She didn't apologize. She went straight to the only leverage she'd ever held over me, the threat of exile. For 34 years, that threat had worked. Every time I pushed back, every time I asked for fairness, someone in my family would remind me that blood was supposed to trump everything else. And I'd fold, I'd pay, I'd forgive. Because the alternative, being alone, seemed worse than being used. I set the phone down on the table, screen up, her message still glowing. She asked if I wanted to lose my family. But my family had already decided to lose me. They made that choice the day they forged my name and split the money 3 ways. So there I was, giving them 30 days, a clear path out, and they responded with silence and a guilt trip. I want to ask you something real. If someone forged your name on a $285,000 loan, would 30 days feel generous or not enough? Drop your answer in the comments, and if this story is hitting close to home, hit that like button. It helps more people find this video. Now, back to what happened next. December 16th. Nathan called me at 4 in the afternoon. The court granted the emergency order. I set my pen down. Tell me the details. 2 parts. First, the mortgage is frozen. The lender can't proceed with foreclosure while the fraud investigation is open. Your house is protected. And the second part? Emergency enforcement order for the rental property. The court found sufficient evidence of fraud tied to the property's use. The occupants are beneficiaries of forged documents used against the owner. The judge signed it this morning. When is it enforceable? December 24th. That's when the court scheduled the enforcement window. Christmas Eve. I closed my eyes. Of all the days on the calendar. The court doesn't schedule around holidays when there's active fraud on real property, Nathan said, reading my silence. The judge's docket was full. This was the first available slot. I drove to his office the next morning and signed everything. 3 copies of the emergency order, authorization for the sheriff's department to serve and enforce, a detailed affidavit attaching the forged mortgage documents, the wire transfer records, the notary certification, and my alibi evidence from July 9th. My hand shook when I signed the last page, not from fear, from the understanding that this signature, my real one, was erasing the possibility of going back to what we were. Nathan slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was a complete copy of the entire case file. Every document, every receipt, every bank record. In case you need to show anyone exactly what happened, he said. I tucked the envelope into my bag. It weighed almost nothing, but it carried the entire story of how my family chose money over me. Now, I had 16 days to wait. Nathan coordinated with the county sheriff's office on December 18th. I wasn't present for that call, but he walked me through it afterward. Deputy Martinez, the officer assigned to our case, confirmed the logistics. The enforcement order would be active starting at noon on December 24th. If I contacted the sheriff's department on that date, deputies would respond to the property to serve the order and ensure compliance. What happens if they refuse to leave? I asked Nathan over the phone. That's what the deputies are for. The order carries judicial authority. Refusal to comply is contempt of court. And if there are other people in the house? Guests? Guests aren't named in the order. They'll be asked to leave the premises, but they won't face legal action. The order targets the named occupants, your parents and your sister. I drove past the rental property that evening. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it. The house was lit up for Christmas. White lights along the roofline, a wreath on the front door. One of those full, expensive wreaths with pine cones and a velvet bow. Through the front window, I could see the dining room table already set with a runner and candles. 6 cars in the driveway, more on the street. They were preparing for a large gathering. In my house, paid for with my money, decorated with the confidence of people who believed they'd gotten away with it. I drove past without stopping. That night, I got a text from Diane. I hope you come to the party. Let's put this nonsense behind us. Nonsense. $285,000 in forged debt, career-threatening fraud, federal-level financial crime, and she called it nonsense. I didn't reply. I set my alarm for 7 a.m. on December 24th. December 23rd. My house was quiet. I had a small tree in the living room, a 4-foot Douglas fir from the lot on Route 9. I hadn't decorated it. It sat in its stand by the window, smelling like cold pine, and still wearing the plastic netting from the lot. I kept meaning to put ornaments on it. I never did. I opened a photo album that evening. I don't keep many physical photographs, but there's one album from my childhood that I've carried through every move. The cover is cloth, slightly faded, held together with brass rings. Page 6. Christmas morning, 1998. I'm 8 years old, sitting on my father's lap in front of the tree. My hair is in 2 braids. I'm holding a stuffed bear with a red bow. My mother stands behind us, one hand on Diane's shoulder, the other reaching for the camera timer. Diane is smiling at the lens with that effortless beam she's always had. My father is looking at me. I studied his face in the photograph. He looked proud. He looked like a man who would never forge his daughter's name on a loan document. I closed the album and set it on the shelf. No tears, just a long exhale that fogged the window glass. At 11:47, I called Nathan. Everything in place? Yes. Deputy Martinez is on duty tomorrow starting at noon. All you need to do is call. And if I don't call? Then the order sits. It's valid for 72 hours. You can choose when, or if, to activate it. I thanked him and hung up. I sat in the dark for a while, watching headlights sweep across the ceiling from the road outside. Tomorrow, I would walk into that house one last time. Not as their daughter. As the owner. Christmas Eve. 4:58 p.m. I drove to 614 Oak Lane with the manila envelope on the passenger seat and my phone in the cup holder. The sun had already dropped behind the tree line, and the sky was that bruised purple you only get in December in Pennsylvania. The street was packed. I counted 23 cars, my parents' Buick, Diane's SUV, Greg's truck, Uncle Tom's sedan, Aunt Susan's minivan, and a long line of cousins and family friends stretching down both sides of Oak Lane. The house blazed with light. Every window, the porch lights, the string lights my father had mounted along the gutters. Through the front bay window I could see the dining room, the long table, the good china, actually my grandmother's china, pieces my mother had claimed years ago without asking. Candles burning in silver holders. A roasted turkey on a platter. People moving through the room with wine glasses and paper plates, laughing, hugging, settling into chairs. I parked 3 houses down and turned off the engine. The car ticked as it cooled. Snow had started. Light, scattered flakes drifting through the streetlight glow. I was 40 minutes late, on purpose. I wanted everyone seated, everyone comfortable, everyone present. I stepped out of the car and walked up the sidewalk. My heels clicked on the salted concrete. The envelope was in my coat pocket, thick, stiff, impossible to ignore against my ribs. At the front door, I stopped, put my hand on the knob, and listened. Music first. White Christmas, the Bing Crosby version, playing from the Bluetooth speaker Diane always brings. Silverware clinking, a child laughing. Then my father's voice, rising above the rest with the unmistakable cadence of a toast. To a wonderful Christmas, and thank God Christine didn't show up. Glasses clinked, the room cheered. Diane's voice came next, bright and performative, the way she sounds when she's playing to an audience. Nobody wants her here anyway. All she does is wave her checkbook around and act superior. Laughter. Not nervous laughter. Comfortable laughter. The kind that comes from a room full of people who've heard this script before and enjoy the punchline. My mother. She'll come crawling back. She always does. Uncle Tom's brother-in-law, a man named Dean whose face I barely remember, chimed in, "The girl needs to learn her place." More laughter. Someone refilled a glass. The music kept playing. I stood on that porch with snow settling on my shoulders and heard my entire family agree, one voice at a time, that I was the problem. The woman who'd paid their medical bills and funded their restaurant and housed them for free. I was the joke they told at their stolen Christmas party. My jaw tightened. My fingers curled around the envelope in my pocket until the edges bit into my palm. I could feel the cold creeping through my coat, numbing my ears, stiffening my face. For a moment, just a moment, I imagined walking in, slamming the folder on the table, screaming every number, every wire transfer, every forged letter. I didn't. I stepped back from the door, one step, then two, down the porch stairs, across the lawn, back to my car. I opened the driver's side door, sat down, and closed it softly. The interior was freezing. My breath came out in short white clouds. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Nathan's number, pressed call. He answered on the first ring. He was expecting it. "I'm here," I said. "They're all inside." "I'll notify Deputy Martinez," Nathan said. 15 minutes. 15 minutes, I repeated. "Are you okay?" I looked through the windshield at the house, light spilling from every window, my family warm and fed and laughing inside walls I paid for. "I'm fine." He hung up. I set the phone on the dashboard and wrapped my hands around the steering wheel. The leather was ice cold. I didn't turn on the engine. I didn't turn on the heat. I sat in the silence and the dark and the snow, and I waited. 3 minutes. White Christmas ended inside the house. Something by Nat King Cole started. I could hear it faintly through the closed windows, just the bass line and the melody floating across the yard. 5 minutes. A cousin I recognized, Jenny, Uncle Tom's daughter, stepped onto the porch to take a phone call. She didn't see me. She laughed into her phone, stamped her feet against the cold, and went back inside. 7 minutes. Headlights at the end of the street, slow-moving, deliberate. I watched the first sheriff's cruiser turn onto Oak Lane, then a second, right behind it. They drove without sirens, just the low rumble of engines and the slow sweep of their headlights across parked cars and mailboxes. 12 minutes. Both cruisers stopped in front of 614. The deputies stepped out, Deputy Martinez and a partner I didn't recognize. They adjusted their belts, checked their paperwork, walked up the same path I'd walked 10 minutes ago. 15 minutes. Deputy Martinez knocked on the front door. 3 firm knocks, the kind that don't sound like a neighbor or a caroler, the kind that sound like authority. The music stopped, then silence, then Diane's voice, high and sharp through the door. "What the hell?" The front door opened, and the warm air from inside hit the cold night like a wall. I could see it from the car, the golden rectangle of light, Diane's silhouette in the doorway, and the 2 deputies standing square on the porch. Deputy Martinez spoke in a tone I could hear from 70 feet away, clear, practiced, unhurried. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Deputy Martinez with the County Sheriff's Office. We're here to serve an emergency enforcement order issued by the Court of Common Pleas related to documented financial fraud involving this property. There must be a mistake. That was my father. He'd come up behind Diane, filling the doorway with his shoulders the way he always does when he feels threatened. This is a family home. Sir, the property is titled to Christine Andler. The court order names Richard Andler, Patricia Andler, and Diane Andler Reeves as respondents. The order requires all named occupants to vacate the premises by midnight tonight. The room behind them went still. I could see shapes in the dining room, people frozen mid-motion. A woman holding a serving spoon. A man with a wine glass halfway to his mouth. Children looking at the door with wide eyes. Diane turned to the room, arms spread, voice pitched for maximum audience. This is insane. She's doing this on Christmas? Deputy Martinez didn't flinch. Ma'am, the court scheduled the enforcement date. I'm here to serve the order. My father's face was visible through the storm door, flushed, jaw set, eyes scanning the street as if he might spot whoever called. He looked straight past my car without seeing me. 23 people stood in that dining room watching two deputies hand my father a court order on Christmas Eve. The turkey was still on the table. The candles were still burning. I waited until the deputies were inside before I crossed the street. My heels clicked on the frozen walkway. I climbed the porch steps. Through the open doorway, I could see the entire room. My aunt gripping the back of a chair, my cousin Jenny standing motionless with her coat half on, Greg Reeves in the kitchen doorway wiping his hands on a towel and staring at the deputies like a man watching his house burn. I stepped through the door. Nobody spoke at first. They just looked. At me, at my black coat, at the manila envelope in my hand. My mother was the first to find words. Christine, what have you done? I set the envelope on the dining room table, gently, right between the turkey platter and a basket of dinner rolls. What I've done is protect my property from the people who forged my name. Silence, the kind that rings. I opened the envelope and spread the documents across the table. I didn't rush. I laid each page flat with the same care I use when presenting an audit summary to a client. Clear, orderly, visible to everyone in the room. The mortgage application, flagged where the signature didn't match. The notary certification, signed by Linda Pruitt, certifying she'd witnessed me sign in person on a date I was 60 miles away. The wire transfer records, the bank account for the Andler Family Trust I never authorized. 23 pairs of eyes moved from me to the papers and back. Uncle Tom, my father's older brother, stepped forward. He picked up the wire transfer summary and read it through the bottom of his bifocals. The candles on the table flickered. The furnace hummed. Outside, the red and blue lights from the sheriff's cruisers pulsed slowly through the front windows, sliding across the Christmas decorations like a silent alarm. I spoke the way I speak in a boardroom, steady, factual, no inflection I didn't choose. $285,000, a mortgage opened on my house using a forged signature and a fraudulent notarization. The money was wired to 3 accounts. I pointed to the first highlighted line on the transfer summary. $180,000 went to Reeves Table LLC. That's Diane's restaurant. Diane took a half step backward, her wine glass tilted in her hand. $65,000 went to a personal checking account held by Richard Andler, our father. My father didn't move. He stared at the table like it had opened up beneath him. $40,000 went to Patricia Andler, our mother. My mother pressed both hands against her mouth. Aunt Susan, standing beside her, slowly removed her arm from my mother's shoulder. Uncle Tom set the wire transfer document back on the table and looked at my father. His voice was low, but the room was quiet enough that everyone heard it. Richard, is this true? My father said nothing. You told me Christine gave you that money, last August. You sat in my kitchen and told me she'd offered to help with the business. Still nothing. My father's hands hung at his sides. His chin dropped a quarter inch. That was a lie, Uncle Tom said. It wasn't a question. Around the room, I watched the shift happen. My cousin Jenny set down her plate. Dean, the man who'd joked about me learning my place, uncrossed his arms and looked at the floor. Aunt Susan stepped away from my mother and moved toward the coat rack. Nobody spoke in my father's defense. Nobody said it was a misunderstanding. The documents were on the table, and the numbers didn't need interpretation. My father spoke first. His voice cracked on the second word. We were going to pay it back. I looked at him. When? The loan is 5 months old. You haven't made a single payment, not one. He opened his mouth, closed it. His hand went to the back of a dining chair, gripping it like a man steadying himself on a boat. Diane shifted strategies the way she always does, fast, seamless, already recalculating the audience. Her eyes welled up on cue. Her voice dropped to that trembling register she uses when she needs people to feel sorry for her. I was desperate, she said. The restaurant was going under. I didn't know what else to do. I have 2 kids, Christine. 2 kids. She looked around the room, searching for allies. Jenny looked away. Dean studied his shoes. Aunt Susan was already putting on her coat. My mother reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold and shaking. Honey, we can fix this. We can work something out. Don't do this in front of everyone. I pulled my hand back. You forwarded my mail to your house so I wouldn't receive the bank statements. That's not a mistake, Mom. That's a plan. Patricia's face collapsed. Not the performative tears I'd seen 100 times, but something rawer. The face of a woman watching the story she'd told herself for months fall apart in real time. I thought if you didn't see the letters, we'd have time to… To what? Pay it back with money you don't have? She didn't answer. She sat down heavily in the nearest chair, and nobody moved to comfort her. The room had divided without a word. Half the family was already reaching for their coats. The other half stood frozen, watching the wreckage. Deputy Martinez stepped forward. He'd been standing by the doorway, hands folded, letting the family sort itself out. Now he spoke with the same even tone he'd used at the front door. I need the named occupants of this property, Richard Andler, Patricia Andler, and Diane Andler Reeves, to begin vacating the premises. The court order requires compliance by midnight. The room recalibrated. This wasn't a family argument anymore. This was legal. Diane spun toward the crowd, arms wide, voice climbing. Are you all just going to stand there? She's kicking us out on Christmas. Uncle Tom answered before anyone else could. His voice was flat. Diane, you forged her signature. What did you think was going to happen? Diane's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came. It was the first time in my life I'd seen my sister unable to speak. Greg Reeves, her husband, the man who'd been standing in the kitchen doorway this entire time, set his towel on the counter and walked to the hall closet. He pulled out his coat, his keys, and a duffel bag that looked like it had already been packed. He didn't say a word to Diane. He walked past her, past the deputies, and out the front door. His truck started 30 seconds later. The cousins followed. Jenny, her husband Mark, Dean and his wife. They filed out one by one, murmuring goodbyes to no one in particular, eyes down, coats zipped tight against the cold. Aunt Susan stopped beside me on her way out. She squeezed my arm once, quick, firm, and kept walking. My father sat down at the head of the table. The court order lay in front of him, next to the turkey. He didn't read it. He just sat there, hands flat on the tablecloth, staring at something nobody else could see. I left the folder on the table, turned, and walked out the front door without looking back. I want to pause here for a second. I know some of you are thinking, Christmas? Really? But remember, they forged my name on a $285,000 loan. They stole my mail. They used my house for a party while spending my money. I gave them 30 days' notice. They ignored it. The court picked the date, not me. If you think what happened next was justified, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Now let me tell you what came after the party was over. December 26th, Nathan's office, 9 a.m. The filing went out in 3 directions at once. First, a formal fraud referral to the county district attorney. The packet included the forged mortgage application, the handwriting comparison, Linda Pruitt's notary certification, the wire transfer records tracing money to all 3 family members, and my alibi documentation from July 9th. The continuing education seminar in Philadelphia, confirmed by registration logs and a parking garage timestamp. Second, a civil lawsuit against Richard Andler, Patricia Andler, and Diane Andler Reeves for $285,000 in actual damages plus attorney's fees, filing costs, and compensatory damages for credit harm and professional jeopardy. Third, a formal complaint to the State Notary Commission against Linda Pruitt for certifying a signature she never witnessed. I signed each filing with the same pen, black ink, my real signature, the one with the smooth downstroke on the A that nobody in my family could replicate. Nathan walked me through the timeline. The DA's office takes forged mortgage documents seriously. You're looking at felony charges: forgery, mortgage fraud, conspiracy. The investigation will take weeks, but once the grand jury sees the paper trail, indictments are likely. And the notary? Her license is suspended pending investigation. That happened yesterday. Linda Pruitt, my mother's Thursday bridge partner, a woman who sat in my parents' living room drinking iced tea and laughing about book club, and then walked into a title office and swore under oath that she watched me sign a document I'd never seen. I stacked the signed copies and slid them back across the desk. Nathan filed them in a folder labeled Andler versus Andler. "How do you feel?" he asked. I considered the question honestly. "Done," I said. Not satisfied, not vindicated, just done. The way you feel after finishing a long audit. The numbers are final, and the report is out of your hands. The calls started the morning after Christmas and didn't stop. My mother called 14 times in 2 days. I let every call ring to voicemail. The first 3 messages were crying, the wet, ragged sobbing she'd perfected over decades of emotional negotiations. By message 7, the tone shifted to bargaining. "We can sit down and talk about this. We can make a payment plan." By message 12, it was anger. "You're going to regret this, Christine. You think you're so much better than us." Message 14 was my father. His voice was stripped down to something I barely recognized. Quiet, hoarse, old. "I'm still your father," he said. "You owe me that much." I saved every voicemail, forwarded each one to Nathan's office. Diane sent an email. It was long, 9 paragraphs. I read it once. "You're destroying this family over money. Dad might go to prison because of you. He's 63 years old, Christine. Are you happy? Does this make you feel powerful? You always wanted to be the one in control, and now you are. Congratulations. You've ruined Christmas. You've ruined Mom and Dad's lives, and you've guaranteed that my children will grow up wondering why their aunt decided money was more important than blood." She signed it, "Your sister Diane." As if I'd forgotten. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Nathan with a 1-line note. "For the file." My father texted on the 28th. "I'm your father. You owe me respect." I read it at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read my mother's guilt trip 3 weeks earlier. The mug in my hand was warm. The house was quiet. Nobody was asking me for money. Nobody was telling me I was the problem. Respect isn't owed, it's built. And they'd spent every cent of mine. On New Year's Eve, I blocked their numbers. I sat on my couch with my phone and did it methodically. My father first, then my mother, then Diane, then Greg, because I knew Diane would try using his phone next. Each block took 3 taps. Tap, tap, tap. 4 people. 12 taps. 12 goodbyes. I didn't feel relief exactly. I felt the absence of noise. Like walking out of a factory floor after a 12-hour shift. Your ears ring for a while, and then they don't, and the quiet feels so foreign you almost mistake it for loneliness. But it wasn't loneliness. It was space. I decorated the tree that night. I'd bought a box of plain silver ornaments from the hardware store on Route 9. Nothing sentimental, nothing inherited. I hung them one by one while a playlist I'd made myself drifted from the kitchen speaker. No Christmas music, just songs I liked. At 11:58, my phone buzzed. A text from an unsaved number. For a moment, my chest tightened. I thought they'd found a new way through. But it was Uncle Tom. "Happy New Year, Christine. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I should have asked more questions when your father told me you'd given them the money. If you ever need a character witness, I'm here. No strings." I read it twice. Then I texted back. "Happy New Year, Uncle Tom. Thank you." Short, honest, enough. I set the phone down and looked at the tree, silver ornaments catching the lamplight. A 4-foot Douglas fir, finely dressed for the occasion, 3 weeks late. Outside, fireworks cracked somewhere over the ridge. The new year was starting, and for the first time in 8 years, Nobody was going to call me in the morning asking for money. I texted Nathan, "Thank you for everything. I'll see you in court." 6 weeks after Christmas, the grand jury returned indictments. Diane Andler Reeves, 2 counts. Felony forgery in the first degree, mortgage fraud. If convicted on both counts, she faced 3 to 7 years in state prison. Richard Andler, 1 count. Criminal conspiracy to commit forgery, 2 to 5 years. Patricia Andler, 1 count. Accessory after the fact. Specifically, the deliberate forwarding of mail to obstruct the victim's detection of the fraud. The charge carried up to 2 years, but the DA's office indicated they'd recommend probation given her limited direct involvement. Linda Pruitt, separate indictment. Fraudulent notarization. Her license was already suspended. The criminal charge added the possibility of prison time and a permanent ban from notarial practice in the state of Pennsylvania. Nathan called me with the news on a Tuesday morning. I was at my desk at work reviewing a quarterly filing for a client. "The mortgage has been voided by the court," he said. "The lender's fraud investigation confirmed the forgery. The lien is being removed from your property this week. Your title will be clear." I wrote it down on my notepad. Lien removed, title clear. The same 2 words I'd write on a client's file when a dispute was resolved. "And the money?" I asked. "The civil suit is separate. We'll pursue restitution through that channel. But Diane's business accounts are already frozen as part of the criminal case. The bank flagged the wire transfers as proceeds of fraud." I thanked him, hung up, and sat for a moment looking at my notepad. The pen marks were neat. The margins were even. Everything in order. My house was mine again. My name was mine again. The signatures that mattered, the real ones, were all where they belonged. In small towns, news travels through kitchens and parking lots faster than any headline. By February, everyone in Ridgemont knew. The details varied depending on who was telling the story, but the core facts held. The Andler family had forged their youngest daughter's signature, taken a $250,000 loan on her house, and spent it. The daughter called the sheriff on Christmas Eve. Reeves' table started losing reservations within weeks. Regulars who'd eaten there every Friday stopped coming. A review appeared online that simply said, "Hard to enjoy dinner knowing the owner committed mortgage fraud against her own sister." Then another. Then 3 more. By March, the dining room was half empty on Saturday nights. Greg Reeves filed for divorce on Valentine's Day. The timing wasn't poetic, it was strategic. His attorney advised him to separate his assets from Diane's before the criminal case went further. He moved to his brother's place in Allentown and didn't contest custody, he just left. My father's remaining professional contacts dried up. A contractor he'd worked with for 15 years called Uncle Tom and said, "If Richard would do that to his own daughter, I can't trust him with a handshake deal." The phone stopped ringing. My mother lost her standing at Grace Lutheran. Not officially, churches don't issue press releases. But the women who'd sat with her at Bible study for 20 years stopped saving her a seat. The potluck invitations stopped arriving. Patricia Andler, who had spent decades building a reputation as a devoted mother and pillar of the community, found herself eating lunch alone. None of this gave me pleasure. I didn't follow the reviews. I didn't track the divorce filing. Uncle Tom mentioned these things during our phone calls, casual updates delivered the way you'd report weather in a neighboring county. I listened. I didn't comment. The facts were doing their own work. I didn't need to help. Diane made one more play. She always does. In early March, she posted on Facebook. The message was long, carefully worded, and designed to reframe the entire story with herself at the center. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. My own sister has turned our family's private struggles into a legal nightmare. I'm a mother of 2 beautiful children, and I might go to prison because I tried to save my business and help my aging parents. All I've ever done is try to hold this family together, and Christine decided that wasn't enough. Money meant more to her than blood. I'm asking for prayers and support during the hardest time of my life. She tagged it with a broken heart emoji and a praying hands emoji. She left the comments open. The first comment came from a woman Diane went to high school with. "Praying for you, Mama." It got 4 likes. The second comment came from someone I didn't recognize. "Didn't you forge her signature on a mortgage? That's not helping your family. That's a felony." The third comment came from a former Reeves table customer. You stole from your own sister and you're asking for prayers? Within an hour, the post had 47 comments. 41 of them were against her. People I'd never met, quoting details from the court filings that had become public record. Someone posted a link to the county docket. Diane deleted the post after 3 hours. I didn't see any of this in real time. Uncle Tom told me about it the following week, shaking his head over the phone. She thought she could spin it, he said, same as she's always done. I didn't comment. I didn't post anything. I didn't respond to the 3 people who tagged me in screenshots. Silence is its own statement. I'd already made mine on paper. Spring came slowly that year, the way it does in Pennsylvania. A few warm days, then frost, then weeks of mud before the green finally holds. In April, my firm offered me a promotion. Senior manager, partner track. My supervisor told me over coffee in her office, casual, like it wasn't the thing I'd worked toward for a decade. Your numbers have been strong all year, she said, and your client retention rate is the best in the department. I accepted. We shook hands. I walked back to my desk and sat down and realized my hands weren't shaking. A year ago, that promotion would have been followed by a phone call, my mother asking for help with the water heater, my father needing money for taxes, Diane wondering if I could invest a little more in the restaurant. Every professional milestone had come with a family invoice. My credit score recovered in March. The lien was gone. The fraudulent mortgage was voided. My CPA license renewal went through without a flag. The timer they'd set on my career had been diffused. I rented the property on Oak Lane to a young couple, teachers, both of them. They signed a proper lease, paid first and last month's rent, and hung a bird feeder from the porch where my mother's Christmas wreath had been. I liked that. In May, I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was broken, because I wanted to understand why I'd let myself be the family credit line for 8 years without demanding a single receipt. The answer wasn't simple, and it wasn't finished. But I was working on it. Uncle Tom called every other Sunday. We talked about the Phillies, about the weather, about his new fishing spot on the Susquehanna. We didn't talk about the case unless he brought it up first. Family didn't have to be all or nothing. The plea deals came through in June. Diane Andler Reeves, 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation. Full restitution of $180,000. The felony conviction would follow her permanently, on every job application, every background check, every lease agreement for the rest of her life. Reeves' table closed its doors the week before sentencing. The sign came down on a Thursday. By Friday, the windows were papered over. Richard Andler, 12 months suspended sentence, 200 hours of community service, restitution of $65,000, payable over 5 years. The conspiracy charge would remain on his record. At 63, with a revoked contractor's license and a felony plea, his working life was effectively over. Patricia Andler, 2 years probation, restitution of $40,000, community service. The accessory charge was the lightest of the 3, but in a town the size of Ridgemont, a criminal record is a scarlet letter that doesn't wash out. Linda Pruitt, permanent revocation of her notary commission, separate fraud charges pending. Her name was published in the state disciplinary bulletin. Every title company in the region received the notice. Nathan emailed me the sentencing summaries on a Wednesday afternoon. I read them at my desk between client meetings. Each entry was a paragraph. Each paragraph was a life rearranged. I didn't go to the sentencing hearings. I didn't need to see their faces when the judge read the terms. I didn't need to watch my father stand in a courtroom, or my sister walk through a metal detector, or my mother sit in a gallery bench alone. Nathan asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I declined. The documents speak for themselves, I said. He nodded. He understood. The case file told the whole story. Every number, every signature, every wire transfer, every lie that thought it could hide behind the word family. Summer now, July. A full year since someone sat in a title office and signed my name on a loan I never authorized. I'm sitting on my front porch in the evening light, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's been dipped in honey. The fence, the garden I started in May, the mailbox at the end of the driveway that delivers my letters to me and nobody else. I think about the photograph sometimes. The one from Christmas 1998. 8 years old, 2 braids, a stuffed bear with a red bow. My father's lap. My mother's hand reaching for the camera timer. Diane's smile. That family existed once. Or maybe it only existed in the photograph, a 4 by 6 glossy version of who we wanted to be. The real version was already taking shape underneath. The favoritism, the entitlement, the slow calibration of who gave and who took, and who was expected to keep quiet about the difference. I don't hate them. I want to be clear about that. Hatred is a kind of attachment, and I've spent enough years attached to people who treated my generosity as an obligation and my silence as consent. My father is doing community service at the county park, picking up litter along the nature trail 3 mornings a week. Uncle Tom told me. He said my father looks thinner, older. I didn't ask for details. My mother is living with Aunt Susan now. Probation requires a stable address. I don't know if they talk about me. I don't ask. Diane is in minimum security at a facility 2 counties over. I don't know what her days look like. I don't visit. She has not written to me, and I have not written to her. The house is quiet tonight, but it's my kind of quiet, chosen, not imposed. I keep a short list of rules now. I wrote them on an index card and taped it inside my kitchen cabinet next to the spice rack. Nobody sees it but me. 1. I do not lend money to family. If I choose to give, it's a gift with no expectation of return. If I can't afford to give it away, I don't write the check. 2. I do not provide free housing. My rental property has a lease, a security deposit, and a payment schedule. Tenants are tenants. Family is family. The categories don't overlap. 3. I do not respond to guilt as a negotiation tactic. If someone tells me I'm selfish for having boundaries, that's confirmation the boundary is necessary. 4. I do not carry other people's financial emergencies. I can offer a referral, a credit counselor, a social worker, a legal aid office. I cannot offer my signature. These aren't punishments. They're not walls built from anger. They're guardrails. The kind you install after you've seen what happens when the road has none. I still talk to Uncle Tom. We had dinner last month at a diner halfway between Ridgemont and my town. Neutral ground, his suggestion. He ordered the meatloaf. I ordered a turkey club. We didn't talk about the case. We talked about his daughter Jenny's new job and whether the Phillies had enough pitching to make a run this year. That's what family looks like to me now. A diner booth, an honest conversation. Nobody owing anyone anything except the truth. I wrote a letter to myself the week after the sentencing. Not to send, just to keep. 1 page, handwritten, folded into an envelope and tucked into the same cabinet where the index card lives. It says everything I needed to hear and nobody in my family ever said. I read it once a month. Then I close the cabinet and make dinner. If you're watching this, and you recognize something, the guilt trips, the but we're family excuse, the slow draining of your savings and your patience and your self-respect, I want you to hear this from someone who's been on the other side of it. Setting a boundary is not betrayal. It's survival. I spent 8 years writing checks and swallowing my frustration and telling myself that love meant never asking for fairness. I told myself that good daughters absorb the cost, that keeping the peace was the same as keeping the family, that one more loan, one more favor, one more year of silence would finally be enough to earn the respect I'd been chasing since I was a kid sitting on my father's lap. It was never going to be enough. The goalposts move every time you reach them. The people who take from you without gratitude will never stop on their own, because you've taught them that taking is free. I didn't want to call the sheriff on Christmas Eve. I didn't want to sit in a lawyer's office reading wire transfers with my family's names on them. I didn't want any of this, but I wanted to keep my house. I wanted to keep my career. I wanted to keep the life I built with my own hands and my own name and my own 60-hour weeks. And when the choice came down to protecting myself or protecting the people who were stealing from me, I chose myself. They called me cold. They called me selfish. They called me the accountant, like it was the worst thing a person could be. But I still have my house. I still have my name. I still have my peace. And for the first time in my life, that is enough. Family isn't a debt, and love should never require collateral. I drove past Oak Lane last weekend. The rental property looks different now. The young couple, the teachers, painted the shutters sage green. There's a vegetable garden along the south side of the house where my mother's rose bushes used to be. A tricycle sits on the front porch, bright red, tipped on its side like someone dropped it mid-ride. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, ran across the yard chasing a dog, a mutt with a bandana around its neck. She was laughing the way kids laugh when they've forgotten anyone's watching. Pure noise, pure joy. I slowed the car but didn't stop. The house was warm and occupied and cared for. That was enough. I drove home, pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine. The mailbox flag was up. The carrier had come while I was out. I walked down the driveway and opened the box. Electric bill. A postcard from Uncle Tom, sent from a fishing trip in the Poconos. A furniture catalog I didn't subscribe to. All of it addressed to me. All of it delivered to my house. Nobody had rerouted it. Nobody had intercepted it. Nobody was reading my bank statements at a kitchen table 60 miles away, calculating how much more they could take. I carried the mail inside, set it on the counter, hung my keys on the hook by the door. The only hook, the only key. The house was quiet. The late afternoon sun came through the kitchen window and made a rectangle of gold on the floor. The silver ornaments from New Year's Eve were still on the tree, which I'd moved to a shelf as a year-round decoration. They caught the light and sent tiny bright circles spinning across the ceiling. My name is Christine Andler, and this is my house. So that's my story. And I want to know, what would you have done? Would you have walked away that night, or would you have walked in? Let me know in the comments. If this story made you feel something, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you haven't seen my last video, I left a link in the description. It's another story about someone who refused to stay silent. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.